The dollar has almost never looked stronger than it does right now. It buys more than most of its rivals. It sits at the center of nearly every major transaction on Earth. When the world gets frightened, money doesn't run away from the dollar. It runs toward it. And that is exactly the problem. Because in finance, the thing that feels safest is very often the thing carrying risk that no one is bothered to price. Strength has a way of hiding fragility. It makes people comfortable. It makes them stop asking questions. And the quiet danger of this particular moment is not that the dollar is falling apart in front of us. It's that it looks so solid that almost no one is willing to ask what's actually holding it up. Here is the question worth sitting with for the next several minutes. What if the dollar's strength isn't proof that the system is healthy, but proof of how much the world has come to depend on a single point of failure? Because those are not the same thing. A currency can be strong because the economy behind it is thriving, or it can be strong because everyone is crowded into the same lifeboat at the same time, convinced there's nowhere else to go. From the outside, both look identical. The exchange rate is high. The demand is real. The confidence is visible. But underneath, one of those situations is stable, and the other one is a setup. And telling them apart is the whole game. To understand why this matters, you have to understand what the dollar actually is, beyond the paper and the numbers on your screen. The dollar isn't just America's currency. It's the world's operating system for money. Global oil is priced in it. International debt is issued in it. Central banks in countries that have nothing to do with the United States still hold enormous reserves of it because when they need to settle accounts with each other, the dollar is the common language. That gives America something no other nation on earth has. When the U.S. government wants to borrow, the entire planet lines up to lend. When Americans buy goods from abroad, they pay in the very currencies they alone can create. It is, without exaggeration, one of the greatest economic advantages any country has ever held. But every advantage has a shadow, and the shadow of this one is dependence. A system where the whole world relies on one currency only works as long as the world keeps believing in it. That belief is not written into the laws of physics. It's a habit. A very deep, very old, very reinforced habit, but a habit all the same. And habits, especially financial ones, can hold firm for decades and then shift faster than anyone expected. The strength you see today is the accumulated weight of that habit. It's not a guarantee about tomorrow. It's a snapshot of confidence that has been building for so long that most people have stopped treating it as confidence at all. They treat it as a fact of nature. That's the first crack in the thinking, and it's an invisible one. Now here's where the surface story and the deeper story start to separate. On the surface, a strong dollar sounds like unambiguous good news for an American. Your money goes further overseas. Imported goods can get cheaper. Travel abroad feels like a discount. And for a while, that's genuinely how it feels. But zoom out from your own wallet to the machine you're standing inside, and the picture gets more complicated. A dollar that's too strong quietly punishes American manufacturers because it makes their goods more expensive for the rest of the world to buy. It puts enormous pressure on every country and company that borrowed in dollars but earns in something else because their debts suddenly get heavier without them doing anything wrong. Strength in one place becomes strain somewhere else. And in a connected system, strain doesn't stay politely in its corner. It travels. So the real question underneath the strong dollar isn't this great? It's, who is quietly struggling to keep up with it, and what happens when they can't? Because a large share of the world's debt is denominated in dollars, held by people who don't print dollars. When the dollar rises, those debts effectively grow. That's fine when times are calm. It becomes a slow-motion emergency when times are. And the uncomfortable truth is that the same fear that drives money into the dollar, a shaky global economy, geopolitical tension, uncertainty about the future, is the exact environment that makes those dollar debts hardest to repay. The strength and the stress are feeding each other. The safe haven and the pressure cooker are in the same room. This is the layer most people never reach because the headline stops them too early. The headline says the dollar is strong, and the mind fills in the rest. Strong is good. Strong is safe. Nothing to see here. But strength in a currency is a relative measurement, not an absolute one. The dollar isn't strong because America's fundamentals are flawless. In many ways, it's strong because everyone else's problems are worse, and because there is no obvious alternative large enough and trusted enough to absorb the world's money. That's a very different kind of strength. It's the strength of being the tallest building in a town with no other tall buildings. Not because you're built better, but because there's nothing else to stand next to. And that kind of strength lasts precisely until someone builds something else, or until the ground itself starts to move. Let me bring this down from the abstract, because this is where it stops being an economics lecture and starts being about your life. If you're an American with a paycheck, a savings account, a retirement plan, or a mortgage, the dollar isn't a foreign concept. It's the unit your entire financial existence is measured in. Every dollar you've ever earned, saved, or planned around assumes one thing quietly in the background, that the dollar will keep meaning roughly what it means today. That assumption is so automatic you've probably never consciously made it. But it's the single largest bet in your financial life, and you never chose it. It was chosen for you the day you were born into a dollar economy. When the dollar is strong and stable, that bet feels invisible. It's only when the ground shifts that people suddenly realize how much they had been riding on it. And here's the part that should make you sit up. The risk we're describing doesn't announce itself. There's no siren. A currency crisis, or even a slow erosion of confidence, rarely looks like a crash on day one. It looks like a series of small, reasonable-seeming adjustments. A country deciding to settle a little more of its trade in something other than dollars. A central bank quietly buys more gold and slightly fewer treasuries. A new payment arrangement between two nations that used to root everything through the dollar and now roots a little less. None of these individually is a headline. Each one is a rounding error. But direction matters more than speed, and a lot of small movements in the same direction is not noise. It's a trend that hasn't been named yet. By the time it gets a name, it's usually well underway. This is the twist that reframes the entire topic. We've been trained to watch for danger in the form of weakness, a falling currency, a spiking crisis, a visible panic. So when the dollar is rising, our threat detector switches off. But some of the most significant financial shifts in history happened not during the moment of obvious weakness. They were set in motion during the moment of apparent strength, when everyone was too comfortable to prepare. The seeds of the next problem are almost always planted in the soil of the last success. The strong dollar isn't the opposite of risk. Under the wrong conditions, it can be the disguised risk, wares. And a disguised risk is far more dangerous than an obvious one, because no one takes cover from a threat they've been taught to see as protection. Think about what strength does to behavior. When something feels safe, people take on more of it. They borrow more against it. They build more on top of it. They stop diversifying because diversifying feels like paying insurance against a fire that never comes. The very reliability of the dollar encourages the whole world to concentrate around it more tightly, which makes the system more efficient in good times and more brittle in bad ones. Every additional layer of dependence is another thing that has to unwind if confidence ever cracks. This is the paradox at the heart of the story. The stronger and more trusted the dollar becomes, the more the entire global system leans its weight on that single pillar, and the more it would cost everyone if that pillar ever wobbled. Safety, taken far enough, quietly manufactures fragility. Now, I want to be careful and honest here, because this topic attracts a lot of noise. I'm not telling you the dollar is about to collapse. I'm not giving you a date, because anyone who gives you a date is selling you something. The dollar's advantages are enormous and deeply entrenched, and systems this large do not turn on a dime. The United States has real strengths that aren't going away tomorrow. Deep and liquid markets, the rule of law, the sheer size of its economy, and the simple fact that the world still hasn't found a replacement it trusts more. Those things are real, and they matter. But acknowledging strength and ignoring risk are two different acts, and the mistake most people make isn't believing the dollar is strong. It's believing that strong and safe are the same word. They aren't. Something can be strong and still be carrying risk that hasn't come due. So what actually determines which way this goes? It comes down to trust and alternatives. Two forces that move slowly and then all at once. Trust is built over generations and can be spent much faster than it's earned. Every year of large deficits, every episode where debt becomes a political weapon, every moment where the machinery of American finance is used to punish other nations, sends a quiet signal to the rest of the world. Maybe depending this heavily on one currency, controlled by one government, is a vulnerability we should reduce. Not eliminate, reduce. And reduction at the margin, spread across enough of the world's largest holders, is all it takes to change the story. Meanwhile, alternatives that used to sound like fantasy, other currencies, gold making a quiet comeback in central bank vaults, new settlement systems that route around the dollar, don't have to win. They just have to become plausible enough that the world stops assuming there's no other option. The dollar's greatest protection has always been that there was no alternative. That protection weakens the moment an alternative merely becomes thinkable. And this is where it loops back to you, because none of this stays in the abstract world of central banks and reserve currencies. It lands in ordinary life through the channels you already feel. If confidence in the dollar ever softens meaningfully, the first place it shows up isn't in some distant financial report. It shows up in prices, because a weaker dollar buys less of the world's goods, and that pressure flows straight into the cost of living. It shows up in interest rates, because if the world becomes less eager to lend to the U.S., the price of borrowing rises for everyone. Mortgages, car loans, credit cards, the whole architecture of American debt. And it shows up in savings, because the real value of the money you've carefully set aside depends entirely on the currency it's held in keeping its purchasing power. The strong dollar you're enjoying today and the financial pressure you might feel tomorrow are connected by a single thread: confidence. And confidence is the one thing on this list that nobody can guarantee. Here's the deepest layer, the one worth carrying with you after this ends. The most important risks in a financial life are almost never the ones that are being loudly discussed. Loud risks are, by definition, already priced in. Everyone sees them, everyone is bracing for them, and the market has already adjusted. The dangerous risks are the quiet ones. The assumptions are so deep and so widely shared that no one thinks to question them. For most of the modern world, the permanence and safety of the dollar is exactly that kind of assumption. It's not that people believe the dollar is safe, it's that they've stopped experiencing it as a belief at all. It has become part of the invisible furniture of reality. And that is precisely the condition under which the biggest surprises are born, not from the thing everyone fears, but from the thing everyone has quietly agreed to stop examining. None of this is a reason to panic. And panic would be the wrong lesson to take from it anyway. The right lesson is quieter and more useful. It's to understand that strength and safety are not synonyms, that concentration is a form of risk even when it feels like stability, and that the smartest financial thinking has always been about the questions other people have stopped asking. You don't have to predict a future to protect yourself from it. You just have to refuse to treat any single assumption, even one as deep as the dollar, as permanent and beyond question. Awareness isn't fear. Awareness is what lets you stay calm precisely because you've already thought about the thing that catches everyone else off guard. The people who weather financial shifts best are almost never the ones who saw them coming with perfect timing. They're the ones who never fully believe that the way things are is the way things must always be. So the next time you see a headline celebrating the strength of the dollar, hold two thoughts at once. Yes, it's strong, and that strength is real. And it comes with genuine benefits you're feeling right now. But strength is a description of the present, not a promise about the future. And the more the entire world leans on that strength, the more quietly consequential any shift in it becomes. The risk here was never that the dollar looks weak. The risk is that it looks so strong that we've all agreed to stop watching it closely. And in finance, the things you stop watching are precisely the things that tend to move when you least expect them to. If this way of thinking resonates with you, looking past the headline to the mechanism underneath, past the surface story to the risk that's hiding inside apparent safety, then this channel is built for exactly that. We don't panic and we don't hype. We take the biggest forces shaping money in the economy and we slow them down until you can actually see how they work and what they mean for your life. So if you found value in seeing this from an angle most coverage misses, consider subscribing, because the next shift in the story won't arrive with a warning label, and the people who understand it early are always the ones who were paying attention before it became obvious. Leave a comment with what you think is the most underestimated risk in the financial system right now. Not the loud one everyone's talking about, but the quiet one. Nobody is. The best insights in these conversations almost always come from the people asking the questions the headlines forgot to ask. Stay thoughtful, stay curious, and keep watching the things everyone else has stopped watching. That's usually where the real story is.